They say every comic has a cover, but not every story stays inside the lines. Some are too dark for the ink. Some are too loud for the speech bubbles. My name is Aaron, and this is my collection of things that shouldn't exist. You've reached the bottom of the bin, where the back issues have a life of their own. This is Tales from the Shortbox. Every collector knows the feeling of the golden age key in a dollar bin, a miracle in newsprint. But in the high-stakes world of the trade, a miracle is often just an investment waiting for the right market. Tonight, we aren't looking at a single issue. We're looking at an entire planet that was kept in gem mint condition for 100,000 years. A world that was fed, watered, and protected, not out of love, but for the payoff. Put down the price guide. Some things are worth more than money. Tonight we examine the yield. The ships came in low and slow, boxy and gray like old concrete freighters that had finally limped into port after a 1,000-year voyage. They didn't scream across the sky. They simply arrived. Elias Voss stood on the ridge above his family farm in eastern Tennessee, rifle slung over his shoulder out of habit, and watched the first vessel settle above Knoxville. He was 43 then, ex-Marine, the kind of man who still scanned the horizon every morning like trouble might be late for roll call. His wife Mara teased him about it. Their 12-year-old daughter Lila just rolled her eyes and asked if the aliens brought video games. The hulls were scarred, patched, functional, nothing sleek or menacing, just tired. Within a week, the visitors stepped out. They looked almost human, same general shape, same number of limbs, but the differences were there if you looked closely. Eyes set a fraction wider, skin with a faint bluish undertone under sunlight, smiles that never quite warmed their faces. They called themselves the Benefactors and asked for nothing except trust. They didn't stay in the capital cities. They sent liaisons to the rural sectors to ensure the transition went smoothly. The Voss family was assigned one who called himself Eris. Eris arrived at the farm 2 weeks after the landing, carrying nothing but a small satchel and a polite curiosity. He sat at their dinner table the first night, eating Mara's pot roast and praising the texture of the carrots with a voice like warm gravel. His long, multi-jointed fingers handled the silverware with precise grace. Lila, wide-eyed and chatty, explained her homework to him, fractions of all things. And Eris listened as though it were the most fascinating discovery in the galaxy. Mara trusted him immediately. She laughed when he asked for seconds and offered him more sweet tea. Elias watched from the head of the table, fork paused halfway to his mouth. Those fingers. The way Eris's wider eyes tracked every movement in the room without seeming to. The old Marine instincts hummed like high-tension wire. The politicians on the news kept talking about peer species and shared destiny, but Elias realized something they had missed. The Benefactors hadn't shared any technology that made humanity appear. No faster-than-light engines, no advanced physics, no orbital defenses. They gave us atmospheric scrubbers to perfectly regulate the climate. They gave us biocatalysts to make the dirt infinitely fertile. They eradicated pests and diseases. They didn't give humanity the stars. They just gave us better dirt. The two gifts changed everything. First, the atmospheric scrubbers, massive platforms that drifted in the stratosphere and scrubbed carbon and methane faster than any human machine. Within 18 months, the worst of the climate crisis began to reverse. Summers cooled, storms quieted. Mara started sleeping through the night again without worrying about the next drought. The second gift was quieter, more intimate. Biocatalysts mixed into the global water supply and sprayed across every major crop field. Hunger became a memory, cancer rates plummeted, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, virtually erased. Life expectancy climbed past 120. Children grew taller, stronger, and clearer-eyed. On their farm, Lila shot up 4 inches in a single summer. She could run the back 40 without ever getting winded, her laughter bright and endless. Elias watched his daughter bloom and felt something tight in his chest loosen for the first time since coming home from deployment. Mara's hands, once rough from years of hard labor, softened. She laughed more. The corn grew so thick the stalks looked like soldiers standing at attention. For 19 years the Golden Age held. Crops tripled, hospitals emptied, wars over resources simply stopped. There was enough for everyone. Humanity grew soft, happy, and very, very hydrated. People joked that the visitors had turned the Earth into the best garden in the galaxy. But Elias noticed the details. It started with the farm dog, an old shepherd mix named Rusty. Rusty used to pant in the July heat, tongue lolling out as he rested under the porch. By year 3 of the Golden Age, Rusty never panted. He drank endlessly from the water trough, but he never relieved himself. He simply drank and absorbed. One afternoon, Alliance went to lift Rusty into the bed of his truck and nearly dropped him. The dog looked exactly the same shaggy coat, same lolling tongue, but he weighed a shocking amount more, as if his bones and muscles had turned to wet stone. Yet he still bounded around the same as ever. Then Elias saw it happening to his family. He watched Lila come in from work in the fields on a blistering August afternoon. She drank an entire gallon pitcher of ice water in one sitting, smiling and looking completely refreshed. But as Elias looked at his daughter, he realized her shirt was completely dry. She wasn't sweating. Her pores were closed. Her body was retaining 100% of the moisture. When he hugged Mara, she felt different in his arms. Solid, heavy, like a piece of fruit swelling on a vine, perfectly ripe. Eris still visited the farm every few months to check on the biocatalyst levels in the soil. On one of these visits in the 19th year, he brought a small, glowing diagnostic tool and asked to run a routine health scan on Lila, who was now a brilliant, glowing young woman of 31. Eris ran the blue light over her arm, checking the reading, and smiled warmly. He didn't tell Mara her daughter had a strong immune system. Instead, he murmured, "Her cellular volume is exquisite. Perfect water saturation. The yield here is going to be magnificent." Mara beamed with pride. Elias felt the blood drain from his face. Mara heard a doctor complimenting a patient. Elias heard a farmer appraising a crop. That night, Mara found Elias sitting on the dark porch, the pieces of his hunting rifle spread across a towel on his lap, oiling the bolt action. She sighed, stepping out into the cool, perfect air. "Eli, the war is over. It's been over for almost 20 years. Nobody gives this much away for free, I know. But sometimes a miracle is just a miracle. Let yourself be a farmer." Elias slammed the bolt home with a sharp metallic clack. He looked out at the impossibly green fields and then up at the stars. "Look at what they did to us, Mara," Elias whispered, his voice tight. "They didn't elevate us. They optimized us. They're treating us like a garden, and every garden has a harvest season." The visitors lived among us in simple modular homes they printed overnight. They taught better irrigation, better soil repair, better medicine. They never demanded payment. They only asked that we remember, 20 years behind them, something worse is coming. They showed the footage in every capital, every town square, every living room. The Red Fleet. Sleek, dark gray hulls edged in blood-red running lights, ships that moved like sharks. The visitors called them the Reapers, interstellar locusts that sucked the water from entire worlds and left the rock behind. They had hunted the Benefactors for 1,000 years, erasing every civilization the gray ships tried to shelter. "We have run long enough," their silver-haired leader told the world, voice calm as still water. "You are a species we have found with both the spirit and the tools to stand beside us. Help us, and we will help you survive." The world believed them. Why wouldn't it? The proof was in the bread on every table, the clean air, the children who would outlive their grandparents by decades. Elias was one of the few who kept his rifle cleaned and his skepticism sharp. Then, on a warm October morning in the 20th year, every long-range sensor the visitors had helped place in orbit lit up blood red. The lead visitor's voice crackled across every emergency channel, no longer calm. "They're here." Red ships punched through the atmosphere over the Pacific like knives. The first city to die was Honolulu. The ocean around it boiled. The visitors screamed a single order: "To the shelters! Defend the reservoirs!" Elias kissed Mara hard, hugged Lila until she squirmed, grabbed his rifle, and ran for the truck. The golden age was over. 10 years of war turned the world into a scar. The Red Fleet never needed to land in force. They struck from orbit, then sent down black battle suits. Sleek armored things that moved like liquid shadow. No one had ever seen what was inside one. The visitors said the Reapers couldn't breathe our oxygen-rich air. The suits protected them while they boiled reservoirs and poisoned wells. Humanity fought anyway. We used the visitors' tech to hide massive underground cisterns the size of small cities. We retrofitted our jets with their lightweight alloys, faster, more nimble, but still carrying the same old missiles because the visitors admitted they had never mastered heavy weapons. "We are farmers," they said with sad smiles, "not soldiers." Elias Voss became the man people whispered about in the resistance cells. Gray at the temples now, back still straight for muscle memory, he carried the same quiet skepticism he'd had the day the gray ships had arrived. He led small teams that hit red supply drops with guerrilla tactics. Collapse a tunnel here, flood a valley there, vanish before the battle suits could lock on. But as the years bled on, Elias noticed a terrifying anomaly in the Reaper's strategies. The Red Fleet possessed orbit-to-surface weapons that could crack tectonic plates, yet they never used them on the human strongholds. The visitors had instructed humanity to build massive underground cisterns to hide and protect their water. The Reapers bombed the surface into glass, but their strikes always stopped precisely 50 feet above the cisterns. They left the underground bunkers perfectly intact. They weren't missing, they were hurting. The Reapers were acting like interstellar sheepdogs, driving the heavy, perfectly hydrated human population deep underground into tightly packed, centralized pens. One night in the ruins of what used to be Chattanooga, his teams trapped a lone red battlesuit in a collapsed subway tunnel. The thing had taken a direct hit from one of the nimble new jets. Armor cracked along the torso and helmet. It was leaking something thick and blue. The squad surrounded it, rifles steady. Elias stepped forward. Open the helmet. A young soldier hesitated. What if it's toxic? It's dying anyway, Elias said quietly. I want to see the face of the thing that boiled the Pacific. He reached down, fingers found the seam. The black metal helmet came away with a wet hiss. The creature inside gasped for air that burned its lungs. It was Eris. The exact same wide-set eyes, the exact same faint blue undertone to the skin, the face of the being who had once sat at the Voss dinner table, praising Mara's pot roast and listening patiently while 12-year-old Lila explained her fractions. The same warm, polite smile now twisted in pain, blue fluid bubbling at the corner of his lips. Eris looked up at Elias and smiled the same gentle smile he had used on their front porch all those years ago. You still don't understand, he rasped, voice wet and translator modulated. We are not two fleets. We are one corporation, two departments. The dying Reaper tossed a glowing data shard weakly onto the cracked concrete. Ship's log. Read it. One of the squad's techs slotted it into a battered tablet. The screen flickered to life. The first entry was dated 100,000 years ago, Earth time. Panspermia seed deployed on the third planet of a G-type star. Water-rich world. High potential for carbon-based filtration units. The entries marched forward through human history. Species developed in agriculture. Good yield projection. Species split into nation-states. Manageable conflict levels. Atmospheric scrubbers and biocatalysts deployed per farming division protocol. Hydration density increased 18%. Livestock now optimal for long-haul transport. The final entry, only weeks old. Harvest division arriving on schedule. Farming division has pre-packed 92% of biomass into centralized cisterns exactly as instructed. Livestock believes it is defending its own water. Efficiency rating exceptional. Elias read the words twice. He thought of Lila, now 31, tall and strong because of the catalysts in her water since childhood. He thought of the shocking weight when he had lifted Rusty into the truck bed all those years ago. He thought of Mara in his arms, solid, heavy, like a piece of fruit swelling on a vine, perfectly ripe. He thought of every reservoir they had fortified exactly where the visitors told them to. Eris coughed, blue fluid spattering his chin. You feel it, don't you? How heavy you are? How heavy your daughter became? You don't sweat. You don't waste a drop. You are 84% pure filtered water. You are portable biobags. We fattened you up, then told you to lock yourselves inside massive underground cisterns for protection so we wouldn't have to hunt you down. Eris's eyes drifted toward the ceiling, still smiling that same polite smile. The visitors were the agronomists. We are the butchers. Same species, same employer. It died smiling. Elias stood slowly. He picked up the glowing data shard. The screen didn't display troop movements or military targets. It displayed a topographical map of the Earth, covered in thousands of glowing green dots. They were the underground cisterns. Next to each dot was a capacity gauge, filling up as the fleeing human population was herded inside. One by one, the gauges chimed and locked at 100% maximum density. Beyond the mouth of the ruined tunnel, the sky burned red. The ground shuddered as a massive Red Fleet ship descended from orbit, settling directly over the nearest fortified bunker. It didn't fire its weapons. It simply extended a massive, humming extraction tube down into the earth. Elias looked at his squad, young faces that had grown up in the Golden Age, healthier, stronger, and heavier than any generation before them. Get on the radio, Elias said, his voice flat and dead. Tell the other cells to stop reinforcing the cisterns. Tell them to stop running into the dark. One soldier stepped forward, his voice shaking. Why? What do we tell command? Elias Voss stared into the shadows where the dead Reaper, where Eris lay, identical in every way that mattered to the beings who had once called them brothers. The match was over. There were no more moves. Tell them the truth, he said. The yield is ready. The Great Harvest is a quiet thing. It doesn't happen with a bang. It happens with a ledger. Elias Voss learned the hard way that when gods offer you a golden age, they aren't looking for followers, they're looking for a high return on their investment. We spent centuries thinking we were the authors of our own story, only to find out we were just the inventory, pre-packed, hydrated, and ready for the long haul. Next time you look at the stars, don't look for a sign, look for the sold sticker, because once the crop is ripe, the farmer doesn't stay to chat. We're filing this one away under final issues. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and your skepticism sharp. This has been Tales from the Shortbox.